Fragments of Silicon, helping you keep up with the gaming news when we can keep up with it.
I, for one, managed to actually watch that PlayStation lineup thing. And that was not it, because it was 5:30 in the goddamn morning. Like, but anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew.
Woohoo!
Yep. A bit of... I suppose for the foreseeable future, Mac's not going to be on the show. I don't know. He's not really talked about it or anything, but I think he's running Uber rides right now. Like, I don't know. He didn't pop in again, did he?
Not that I saw.
If he did, he's still being quiet.
Yeah. So, like I said, this could change as soon as next week, but until further notice, Mac is on hiatus, I suppose. Also, Kevin will not be with us in the post show this week because he had to flee the hurricane. He's safe in Atlanta. Hopefully, his dwelling and his belongings survived the hurricane. So we'll have more from him next week. All right. So with that out of the way, let's get to the news. Twilight, you start us off.
Okay. This week, not much has been going on. We're considering looking into apartments, however, for me for the winter season, because whenever it snows where I live, the road can be pretty treacherous. Yeah, so I might be getting an apartment in the near future for winter season. So I'll be in town, so I don't have to cross the hill on the way to town. So I don't have very far to go to work. So that any more of Dragon Quest XI, and my soul hasn't been consumed yet.
Give it time, apparently. We've lost Ogre to the Void.
Is that all that surprising?
I think the only time that he pops away from Dragon Quest is for raid.
Once again, we all knew this was going to happen.
We might see him in the spring thaw. It's summer. You know what I said.
Anyway, and I also took a shot at the Mega Man 11 demo, and it's definitely kept the Mega Man difficulty, and feels like Mega Man as well, which is good. And
some traditions do indeed die hard.
Indeed. And that's about it for me.
All right, Galix?
Not a whole ton going on around here. I've still been playing Dead Cells in my spare time. Thankfully, we're too far north to have any significant weather danger, although it's been annoyingly cloudy lately, but, I'll take annoyingly cloudy over have to evacuate. Yeah, not a whole lot going on. Work's been a little bit of a pain, but, that'll happen sometimes.
All right, Petty Fan?
Well, I was supposed to see my doctor on Monday, and she decided to cancel, and her office didn't notify me. So that was a fun hour of my life wasted. Well, actually 2 hours if you count the round trip. So that kind of sucked.
Petty Have you been able to reschedule that?
Yeah, it's rescheduled for this Monday, which I'm probably going to call her office before we leave and make sure she didn't cancel again.
Maybe do that on Friday as well.
That's the problem. She called in the day Monday morning.
Hmm.
So yeah. As far as gaming stuff, not really a whole lot's happening. And I guess a little bit of a programming thing for if anybody's wondering why we didn't stream yesterday. If we have to pick up a random person, I'm not going to be streaming Final Fantasy XIV, just because, I'd rather not somebody go on a racist tirade or something like that on stream, because it's somebody we don't know. So it's best not to have that variable. So yeah, if you see us not stream on the Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday, it's more than likely because we had to pick up a random.
Okay then. Anything else?
Not really. Just kind of waiting for the 4th for my SSI hearing. That's gonna be fun.
Good luck.
Yep.
Well, I guess it's my go then.
Yep.
Well, news certainly goes faster when you have less people. Anyway.
I mean, we can make it go longer if you want.
Yeah, I'm good. Like, honestly, I kind of thought the news was getting too long as it was. Especially with Mac's endless projects. But that's that's a day. That's a story for another day, I suppose. Anyway, let's see. I suppose the big news is my couch came in.
Oh man, couches.
Yeah, like, believe me, my back is thanking because, well, the old one was getting long in the tooth, or the spring, I suppose. Like,
why is my leg bleeding? One of those type things.
No, my back would hurt when I laid on it for too long. Like, it was just getting old. I mean, it was kind of old when I got it, and this thing is, well, it's still a used couch, but it's in better condition. Let's just say, like, I'm the old one wasn't in danger of collapse or anything. It was just, it was starting to sag and all that. So, yeah, and it's got a fuck ton of pillows. Like, I have more pillows than I really know what to do with.
Make a fort.
Like, I am not making a pillow fort.
You're lost then.
Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, this was the big early Christmas present, so to speak. Like, which is fine by me. Since, I'm at the age where, getting practical shit is just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, like, given what we work in, getting a new game just doesn't have the appeal it once did.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, that's like, a random day, and it means I have to do it for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, they're not usually the $60 games, usually, but we still get a few of those.
Right.
Anyway, as far as gaming goes, yeah, just plugging away at the review set, sort of. Well, that is to say, I'm heavily favoring one game and avoiding as much of the other as I can.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, spoiler alert. It's not so much that it's a bad game, it's a
not up our alley game.
Yeah, I mean, we occasionally get some of these. We're reviewing a golf game on Sunday, and a golf sim at that.
Yeah, it's not like Hot Shots or Mario Golf.
Yeah,
it's actual
it
golf.
It's a simulator with great fidelity to the actual sport of golf, which would be great if we were big golf fans.
Yeah, I'm like, basically,
we can respect it as a piece of technology that is simulating golf.
Like, anyway, I'm like, more on that on Sunday. Or anyway, I suppose, yeah, that's about it for the news this week. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast, and joining us, is John Pickett of MangaGamer.
Hello, thank you all for having me back on.
No problem, no problem. Always good to have you. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, as there seemingly always is in the world of visual novels this year. Like, yeah, I mean, in fact, I'm like, where to start? I'm like, I suppose we should start with GOG because, well, they just released that banned Steam game on their service.
Yeah, so those of you that have followed the show have already probably heard about how we've been working with GOG recently, especially since Steam has become less viable and more fickle. And we were finally able to get the Maidens of Michael put up on GOG. We haven't made any edits to Maidens of Michael from the version that was up on Steam. So we're really excited to have the game out and on a proper retail store again. And of course, Valve still refuses to talk to us about Maidens of Michael.
Like, which is doubly interesting considering what happened just a couple of days ago. So
yes.
Right. So if you haven't heard this, Valve's new content tools got released. And yeah, the floodgates are kind of open. Open porn games are on the service now. Like
kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Like I saw at least one. Like,
so there's a couple of things that's going on with the service right now. One, you can technically find games that Steam has now labeled adult on Steam. And games that are labeled adult are essentially invisible on the store. If you want to see them, if you want them to turn up in search results, you, as a user, have to go into your Steam settings, find the setting that has been default enabled for you to block all adult categorized titles from the Steam store that you view. So while these adult titles are technically being published on Steam, they are still largely invisible right now. If anything, they're getting much, 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 much less visibility than any other game released on Steam. And yes, right now we have a couple developers that are starting to they're essentially testing the limits of Valve's claims right now. We have developers that are pushing new titles to Steam under this adult category to see, and they're waiting to see if it gets through. It's not like Valve has spoken to any developers. It's not like Valve has come out and told anyone, yes, you can sell these games. It's these developers are just going through Valve's automated systems to get the game pages up, get the game builds submitted, and attempt to get the game to see release. So they won't know if it's acceptable or not until after it's released, and given that Valve has already shown that they are more than willing to go back and either ban or issue takedown notices for games that have already been released. Even a release doesn't necessarily mean these titles are safe yet. Right. There's other developers that are currently updating the existing titles they have on Steam to feature the adult content out of the build downloaded from Steam. And again, a lot of these developers aren't going through Valve. They're not talking to Valve. They're not doing anything with Valve other than filling out the automated forms on the back end system and pushing the update out without really notifying anyone.
Like, it's an interesting tactic to be sure. Like, so where does MangaGamer stand on this?
I would say we are skeptically optimistic. Right now, we have already sent our own emails and such out. We've reached out to Valve. We are planning to give them a reasonable amount of time to try and respond. We don't actually expect them to give us any response, but we are going to give them the courtesy of a time in which they can attempt to respond, or a time in which we're going to give them the courtesy of a chance to respond to us. And assuming they don't respond at all, which is what we assume the outcome is going to be, we're going to essentially start. The plan is to start moving forward and pushing existing titles from our catalog to Steam to start testing the waters. And for the beginning, we're going to be pretty strategic and careful about the titles we choose, because essentially we're going to be trying to test title by title what content is going to flip Steam switch. Because right now, no one knows. No one has any idea what content Steam considers unacceptable. Because if you look, when you go through the automated systems, when you go through the back end, pornography is still listed as banned. Even though they've created this entirely new adult section and adult category for games, the user agreements that you agree to as part of these automated forms continue to say that you are not allowed to submit pornography.
Well, it's like, yeah, I guess it's the only way to find out. Like,
I mean, the ideal way to find out would be Valve actually made a statement, actually gave standards, and actually did their job as a retailer.
But that would take effort.
Exactly. That's not something they can automate.
Yeah. Well, it's up to titles like Negligee Love Stories to test the horizon. And yeah, that is one of the titles that's under the new adults only banner.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, and that's something else and that too is something that developers are going to have to consider moving forward with Steam, is that even if Steam is allowing this adult content, do you still publish your game with it, or do you remove it in order to gain that visibility access to the rest of the Steam store? Because as it stands right now, if your game is an adult game, you are invisible on Steam. Like, I don't know, like, if you guys right now, if you guys have not already adjusted your settings, you could go on Steam, you can search for Melty's Quest or Negligee, and you will not see it.
Yeah, it's like I had to point that out to my colleagues the other day when the news broke. They were I showed them Negligee, and they were reporting a broken link. I'm like, no, you got to turn on the new parameters. And you can do it another way. You can go find like a mature rated title, and it'll ask you your preferences. That happened to me while I was looking at Kingdoms of Amalur.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, with the new systems in place, adult titles are completely invisible, while mature titles are simply like grayed out so that you can't see details, but they're still at least listed.
Right. So, yeah. I like personally. I'm interested to see what transpires from these tools, because, I can't say Valve has been handling it with the greatest of care. I don't think anyone could. But
no.
Given
they're kind of bumbling at best.
Yeah. Still, given what they are, this is actually a big step forward, because
Yeah, if they actually do open the gates and start allowing explicit adult content, that is a huge step. If they are not being truthful and they do start banning or prohibiting certain content, then it might not be the huge leap we're all hoping for, but that's probably more realistic expectations because I don't think Steam is ready to carry certain games and titles. Like from our own catalog, I don't think Euphoria is the kind of thing Steam's quite ready to accept. But if they are,
like I
that would
said,
be a game changer.
you know, it's like, well, someone's going to find out one way or another. It's like, oh, who is going to be the test tube? Anyway, yeah, so that's a developing story. We'll probably be talking more about it, well, the next time we have you on, say November.
Yeah.
But, like, anyway, so next up, I want to talk about your first original project, according to the notes here.
Yes.
Koropokur in Love.
Yeah, Koropokoro. Yeah. It's the name is basically it's the specific type of essentially fairy in Japanese folklore. They're basically little tiny people, kind of like the 1-inch men or the Koropokoro. They're spirits that can literally fit in the palm of the human hand.
Yeah, it's Ainu specifically, I believe.
Yes, the word is Ainu in origin.
Right. I think we talked about this title a bit last time, but since this game is coming out soon, it's probably best to get a refresher. Like,
yeah.
Right. So, I suppose the first question that comes to mind is what made you guys want to do your own original title after so long?
So I mean, honestly, a lot of the project started as essentially our 10th year anniversary project. 2018 basically marks the 10th year that we as MangaGamer have been operating as a business and releasing titles in English and doing the whole localization and publishing of visual novels. So we wanted to do something special to celebrate that, and the making our own visual novel ended up being the idea that we settled on. More so, especially, a lot of different things sort of aligned in that we had people with the idea for a novel in place. The artist Itaru Inoue had just recently left Key and become available to do work outside of the company that she had worked for so many years. And so it was a lot of things like that just sort of came together fortuitously, allowing this project to ultimately happen. And that includes the fact that we were able to get it kickstarted and funded and make it the success it was.
How much money did the Kickstarter raise?
It was, I want to say, 37,000.
How above, or was that par?
We managed between that and the additional money that we got through Backer Kit for add-ons and stuff after the Kickstarter. We managed to hit our first stretch goal, which was 40,000. 30,000 was the base goal.
Okay. And what was the stretch goal?
The stretch goal was dual language support and porting the game over to the Unity engine so that it's also Linux and Mac compatible.
Neat. What was I'm not sure how much you can speak to this, but what was it like, actually producing a visual novel? From what I gather here, a Japanese visual novel at that.
Yeah, so it's obviously being released here in English. I would say first, except we'll be releasing it on Steam, so the Japanese audience will also be able to buy it at the same time through Steam. Um, but yeah, so we gathered a team together to do the development. We had a director and whatnot, the standard, well, essentially it's like the standard team you would expect with like director, programmer, artists. We hired a company to do the music, and so we had our supervisor was overseeing that. We had the directors and the writers. Uh, the directors and writers did a lot of the sort of day-to-day grind work, and a lot of all the people we work with are experienced people who have done this before for other games, other titles, other companies. So we weren't working with anyone who was new to creating a visual novel, aside from maybe ourselves. And even then, we've spent 10 years localizing visual novels, so we had to step up from someone who has just decided to do this for the very first time. And go ahead.
And well, on your side, did you ever recruit like anyone who worked on, say, Western visual novels?
No, we did not. All of the individuals we worked with on the majority of the development were Japanese professionals. The writer was a writer, director, the sound studio were Japanese professionals. And part of that comes from the fact that there are a lot of people in the visual novel audience that have expressed a preference for Japanese visual novels. So that was part of it. Also, I would say the amount of experience and the backgrounds and skills and expertise that a lot of the Japanese professionals have is a little higher than those of most Western visual novel developers, but a lot of that is just because they have been doing this in Japan for much longer than they have over here in the West.
Makes sense. And how long has this project been gestating?
Maybe 2 years, because there's this year where we started sort of the initial planning, getting sort of the initial demos and stuff that we would need for the Kickstarter, but sort of the coming up with the idea to do this and to do something like this sort of happened a little bit in the year prior.
Sounds like a standard amount of time given these things. And is this a standalone experience, or is this like the first chapter of a larger series?
It's a standalone. It's the game as a whole is standalone. During the Kickstarter, we had put up a couple of stretch goals for extra side stories and whatnot, featuring like that would focus on two of the heroines, which are currently more side characters in the main story. But the content that we had in mind for those stretch goals would have been sort of epilogue content. They would have been set after the main story, which is what we'll be releasing in less than 2 weeks.
And I'm guessing there are no plans to develop them now?
At the moment, no. I mean, we could be surprised. The title could sell ridiculously well once it's finally released on Steam.
Fair enough.
So it's not like the plans are... It's not like the plans have been thrown in the basket. They've just been filed away for if we get a chance to pull them out of the archive.
Fair enough. And, well, I suppose we should dig a little further and talk about what is this about, other than, little people?
So the main story focuses on uh, the heroine Ashirera, who is one of the Koropokuro. She has left the village, something which is sort of taboo, and in doing so knows she can't go back. And she's left it looking for love in the human world, and it's there in the human world when she visits and comes to Akihabara that she meets the other main character of the story, which is Satoru. And he is the owner and manager of a maid cafe in Akihabara.
Like a human.
Yeah, Satoru
Manager.
is human. Satoru
Okay.
is human.
Right.
Yeah.
And I suppose in regards to Satoru, are you playing as him? Are you playing as any character, or is it not from a first person perspective, so to speak?
I would say it's kind of from almost a limited third person because it shifts between Ashira and Satoru's perspectives. So there are times where you're viewing the story more through Ashira's perspective, and there are other times when you're viewing it more through Satoru's. And it does go back and forth between them at different points.
Okay. And are there any sort of choices to be made here? Any sort of, I don't know, romanticizing elements? Or is this just like a pure story visual novel?
There are romantic elements. The story definitely follows the development of the relationship between Ashura and Satoru as they both sort of focus on their goals, but there's not really any choices. It's pretty much if you've read or experienced like Higurashi or Eden, it's more like that. It's more like the that style of kinetic visual novel where it's straight through from start to finish.
Okay. And are there multiple endings?
There are not.
And let me see. How long would you say it would take to complete this game? Also, is there any sort of voice acting?
We did not hit our stretch goal for voice acting, so we weren't able to include voices in it at this time. As for how long it takes, I would say the title could be completed in probably a single sitting on the weekend.
Because looking at the price of the game, it's $15, and that's kind of
Yeah.
your medium range pricing, I believe.
That's one of our lower end. That's our lower end of pricing. So that usually indicates it's a shorter game.
Well, let's see. I will see if my colleagues here have any more questions on Koro here. Or sorry, I'm mangle this. Koro
Koropokoro, yeah.
I'm not that familiar with Ainu names. Did you get an Ainu name for the? Did you choose an Ainu name for the Koropokuru or?
Yes. All
Okay.
three of the characters have Ainu names. There's Ashirera, Haruante, and Chirta.
Because there's similar to Japanese, but there are actually some significant differences. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how you handle a romantic relationship between a person the size of a hand and the person the size of a person.
Well, one of the Kotopokuru's powers is the ability to change shot size.
Oh yeah, they're the ones who had that mallet, aren't they?
Yeah, so she does spend a lot of the game at human size, but that's also one of the sort of comedic elements to it. Is like a lot of times when she gets flustered, the transformation can come undone and revert her back to her normal size. and a lot of the or like Haruante has a power to control animals and alter their appearance. So there's a pretty funny scene where she loses control of that power because he gets too engrossed in like the food, I think it is. And then Chirta has super strength, so she breaks a lot of things.
Hmm.
Anything else, Gulix?
Those were my main thoughts.
Okay. Like, anyone else?
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
All right. Let's see. I think the other coming soon game you got here is Bitter Exclusion,
Yes.
which is on the adult side of things.
That's Bitter Exclusion is an interesting title. It is all about a guy whose class essentially hates him and hates him so much that they're having orgies without him.
Well then, that's a new one.
Indeed.
Like,
It's like the people in the class are getting off on doing all these sexing things without him and behind his back and keeping him isolated and sort of in the dark from it,
how to
or
make
just not allowing him to participate. It's a very interesting. I don't think there's very many games that cover that specific kind of fetish.
like, I'm like, this might be a measured response to the harem genre. Like, like I don't know. That sounds like it would be improvement on just about every harem anime I've ever seen. God. But
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm guessing, given the title, that this guy isn't gonna take the being left out of the sexy times well.
No, he does not. And there's a couple different ways that things can develop, depending on how it progresses and what happens. Like when he finds out, and the whole situation's revealed.
So this is one where you have more choice then.
Yes.
Like, how murdery does this get?
I don't remember it getting quite that violent.
That's good. Like, yes, yeah, that this kind of thing can go awry. Let's just say. Like, oh, but anyway.
No, it's much more lighthearted than that.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It's like anyway. So like, what level of I don't know, adult are we talking about here? I mean, is it just nudity? Do we get to see the full sex scenes?
The full sex scenes. Like I said, there's quite a few orgies. There's there's plenty of scenes with multiple partners, and you see the dicks, you see the pussies, you see all that.
I'm like, with or without mosaics?
Believe without.
I was about to say, it depends what version you get there, friend.
Like, and is there voice acting in this one?
Yes.
And from what I see here, this is coming out October 11th for the price of
basically $15. Yeah.
$15.
The pre-order discount's 10% off.
Right. And how is the project you're personally working on going?
I just finished the translation for that.
Okay.
So I'm finally. Our editor still has quite a bit of ways to go. And then once he's done, we'll be able to send it off to Clock Up, the Japanese developers, to finish the programming on it and get that into testing and into our release schedule.
And that's I'm trying to remember the title of that.
Maggot Baits.
Yeah, there we go. It was like, it's Maggot something. Like,
yeah.
Like, and God, you've been working on that for what, 2 years now?
Close to it, yeah.
Like, well, how do you feel that the heavy lifting, so to speak, is completed? I know now.
Good. Yeah, it's nice to be done. Looking forward to the next title I get to work on.
Well, are you taking a break, or are you just on to the next one?
I have a little bit of a space right now. I'm finishing up some other admin tasks and a few other things here and there. And then once we have a title ready, I'll start on that.
And I suppose any convention announcements of recent vintage?
Not since Otakon. Did we? Which I believe we already spoke about.
Right.
In November we will be attending Anime New York. If anyone is in the area and wants to come, stop by our booth and say hello.
When in November is that?
I believe that is mid-November. The actual dates are November 16th through the 18th.
Is that your final convention of the year?
Yes.
Makes sense given that late date.
Yeah.
All right. Right. Any final questions from the crew here?
Not that I can think of.
My curiosity is satisfied.
Same.
All right. Well, John, as always, it was a pleasure having you on the program. Let's see. We can have you back on November 3rd, I believe.
Yeah, that'll be before the convention. So.
Okay. Yeah, well, actually, November 7th. Looking at the actual calendar here.
Okay.
Yeah, it helps. It helps if it's a day we actually have a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the wrong month.
Okay. Unless you wanted to have it later to cover the announcements in November.
We could do that. I
we
guess.
can talk after the show too.
Well, it's November 31st would probably be the best there because Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
November what?
31st.
There's no November 31st.
Oh, sorry. That's October. Sorry. God.
I thought I heard November 34th anyway, which is no month has that.
Sorry, November 28th.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. Once again, scroll past the month you wanted. Anyway, yeah. So we'll have you on then.
Okay.
All right. So as always, pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me out. If anyone listening to the show is interested, we are currently having our Otome game sale on our website and on Steam. So if you're interested in Otome games like Oz Mafia or Fashioning Little Miss Lonesome, we currently have all of those on pretty good sale right now. We've even added the vocal albums and soundtrack for Oz Mafia to our website. If you wanted to order a physical copy of those and haven't been able to get them from us at conventions before.
All right. So on that note, Penny Fan, take us to the next segment. All right. So topic of discussion this week has been a bit of an interesting one because, well, we've actually had the company in question on the program. We're talking about THQ Nordic this week because, well, they've been in the news a lot recently.
They've made some acquisitions.
Yes, they've made a lot of maybe not the most acquisitions in the year, but probably
significant ones.
Yeah, their biggest one since the THQ purchase back in 2013. And yeah, for the record, we have had THQ Nordic on the program a couple years ago. That interview actually was the last one we did on the old format. In fact, it's because of that interview that we switched to the new format ahead of schedule, but we've kind of gone over that one. Now, and also we have tried to have THQ Nordic back on the program. There was a lot of scheduling conflicts that weren't able to be resolved last year, and honestly, after a certain point, I kind of stopped trying because, well, I mean, here's how it went. Schedule a time.
We had like 3 or 4 dates that they said were okay, and then very short notice said they weren't okay.
Yeah, I'm like, and it was especially frustrating because since I'm talking to European-based people, I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to check and see if everything was going to be fine before we go on air. And about the third, fourth time that happened, I'm glad we weren't. It was all text because I was very, very upset by that. Because, it's one thing to, scheduling conflicts happen. We understand that. Protracted scheduling conflicts happen as well. But it's another thing to keep saying, yes, this is okay, and then have some other thing come up the day of the show. This also happened in Natsume. And that actually went on for longer. That took about a year before I got fed up with the reschedules. But, as far as having THQ Nordic back on the program, maybe, I don't know.
We would certainly like to have them if they can come up with a time.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe we can actually do it and say, I haven't tried, but, given that PAX and Gamescom are over, and I think all of the, the big game conferences are either taken care of or a TGS just going on at this moment. Because we managed to have Philip on the program in November. So I'm not saying that's going to happen or anything, but, it does seem a bit clearer than, convention season. Then again, they also mentioned that they had limited resources, and this was 2 years ago. So, and given what they've been doing lately, they've got a lot of more resources.
Mm-hmm.
So, I suppose a bit of background on THQ Nordic, if you're not familiar with this company.
THQ was one thing, and then there's Nordic.
Yeah. I'm kind of amazed that people get the THQ. I'm like, the THQ Nordic confused with the old THQ, because there's a Nordic in that fucking title. It's
well, they could just mean they could just think it means hey, it's the Norwegian branch of the original THQ.
I suppose, but I still see the thing. I thought THQ died, and it's like they did. I mean, it's an Atari situation where another company bought a whole bunch of the legacy of this once vaunted publisher and decided to wear it on their face. It went a lot better in THQ's case. THQ Nordic's case.
Mm-hmm. This one still isn't a husk.
No, in fact, THQ Nordic has been growing and growing and growing, ever since then. And that kind of brings us to this year because they've made their biggest moves since 2013. And you've probably seen like some of their headlines. Most recently, they bought the IP Kingdoms of Amalur, which honestly is a thing we should talk about at some point because, just 38 Studios in general is one of the most fascinating implosions in the history of video games. I'm not even joking. As far as Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, I've never played it.
I have it, but I haven't started it up ever.
I've heard various things on it. It was good. It was bloated. It needed a couple of sequels. And this is also off the heels of the purchase of Time Splitters and Second Sight. Time Splitters is one of the more beloved PlayStation 2 era FPS games. seen as the successor to a spiritual successor to GoldenEye and Perfect Dark because there were a lot of veterans of those games who worked on these titles, and this is especially notable because of one of the other purchases that THQ Nordic made this year. Just their biggest overall purchase was Deep Silver and Koch Media. If you don't know who those guys are,
Anime fan on Prime Night.
Well, that too. They were the
They
publisher.
did other stuff besides that.
I know.
No, I'm like
That was just a really inexplicably bad decision.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're probably best known for being the current holders of the Saints Row franchise. They're the ones who took that over, along with the developer after the THQ death and auction. They also took over the Metro series.
Mm-hmm.
They really, or more recently, Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is one of the bigger RPGs to come out this year. Also one of the most controversial, but that's a discussion for another day. And in fact, they are actually going to be publishing Shenmue 3. They actually have a working relationship with Sega. They're the current publishers of Sega's Japanese titles and Atlas games in Europe. And they've also bought a developer and publisher called Handy Games, who is a big player in the mobile game sector. And also virtual reality. So THQ Nordic has been making a lot of maneuvers in becoming, I hesitate to say a AAA publisher because I'm not they're still nowhere near a EA or Ubisoft.
At least a publisher that's looking at some A's, possibly.
Yeah, but they're I'd say they're more than a major mini, as I called them a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of hard to evaluate the size of things, especially since this is a company that is growing really fast. And as far as their actual plans go, as far as a lot of the recently acquired stuff, we won't we're not going to be hearing a lot from what they plan to do for Time Splitters or Second Sight and Kingdoms of Amalur has some issues around it because the first logical step when it comes to THQ Nordic is remastering. THQ Nordic has made a cottage industry of remastering games. We have covered several of them on the program.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of them to bring them up to work on modern operating systems like Darksiders.
Right. Yeah. They are also of the worst fucking names. God. Yeah, I'm like, you got things like Darksiders 2 Definitive Edition and Darksiders War Mastered Edition.
What about Red Faction Guerrilla Remastered Edition?
Oh God.
I'm like, and then there's
It's boring to say it's just remastered. Why can't it be remastered in a very specific way that's thematic to the game, huh?
Because this shit is spreading to other editions. Because next up is Gianna Sisters Twisted Dreams Ultimate Edition.
Ultimate?
Ultimate.
As in like the bird?
Yes.
Oh God, no. Kill it at the source. Kill it at the source.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what to say. Like now, granted, that's strangely enough not every remake or remaster they put out. Like they have a remaster called The Raven Remastered. Like it's an old European adventure game apparently. But no.
Maybe they just couldn't think of anything clever.
I guess not. Or there was Baja. I think this was just called HD Edition, which was stupid in another way because it's an Xbox. You're remastering an Xbox 360 game, which was already HD to begin with. But that's just getting the picking of nits. It isn't.
Hey, you can make things HD than HD now.
Yes, I know, but calling something that was HD to begin with HD Edition is just wrong.
The H could be for higher.
Anyway.
Yeah, even H or D.
Anyway, getting back on track here, like with Kingdoms of Amalur, for example, they still gotta deal with EA because they still have the publishing rights, which is why the game is still on Steam. It didn't vanish in the bankruptcy. But it should also be noted that THQ Nordic isn't just seeking to become, a warehouse of old and dormant IP. I mean, obviously that's probably what they're most known for, but they do have games that are not remasters on their slate. They do have sequels to franchises like Darksiders 3 coming. And of all things, they announced at Gamescom Desperados 3, which is interesting because Desperados is an interesting game. It's a real-time tactics cowboy game, or game series, actually.
Huh.
Yeah, you're still stunned by that.
Yeah, I still can't get. There's just when I think about real-time strategy stuff, I usually think about like in the way of unit variety and stuff, and there's not a whole ton of that in cowboy stuff usually.
Yeah, it's not that kind of game. It's a lot smaller. You're only dealing with like about 6 units, but it's still done in the style of RTS. I'm like, look, if you want to experience the game for yourself, it's not very expensive on Steam. Mm-hmm. Like, just saying there. But they do have some. They do have original games coming up like Biomutant, Fade to Silence, and Scarf. Although, maybe calling Scarf original is a bit of a stretch. I'm just getting sick and tired of seeing the same Journey ripoff character in every artsy indie game.
But scarves move very dynamically and are therefore the superior accessory choice for people who want to do stylistic.
Do they have to make it red?
Yes.
Clearly, red is the primary color of scarves. Non-red scarves cost like 50% extra.
Duly noted. Like, and they've got some other curios, like they've got a working relationship with Microsoft. They've helped bring retail releases of some of their games on PC, like the Halo Wars series, and like. They got some more like Zoo Tycoon, Ultimate Animal Collection, and Super Lucky's Tale. Right. It is kind of odd since I think Microsoft would have the resource to do that themselves. But It is what it is. Uh, you know, as I said, they're a mix of old and new, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did that Battle Chasers Night War game. I could, run down random THQ Nordic games all day, like, but I suppose the topic of discussion here is, you know, do you guys think THQ Nordic is going to get even bigger, or and indeed where could they go? What dormant IPs could they pick up?
I mean, to some extent, it depends on how well the stuff that they're getting does.
Yeah, if I was about to say, if everything they get flops, then they're probably not, I think, expand anymore.
Possible, but like I said, this isn't even including the Deep Silver side of things. Like, and also another aspect, or maybe the main reason they got Deep Silver is because Deep Silver is deep into distribution. Like, they've got a lot of distribution that I don't think THQ Nordic had beforehand.
Well, that's always a good thing to add to your portfolio.
Yeah. And indeed, it is, and as far as, dormant IP, it's kind of hard to predict because there is a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of old developers that went under. Their IPs are sitting in some trust somewhere.
Yeah. And indeed, I suppose a better question is, how much pull does THQ Nordic have? Because that gets to, like Night Dive and their unsuccessful quest to get No One Lives Forever. I do wonder if a THQ Nordic would have, given that they clearly have more resources than Night Dive. No offense, to either. It's just, THQ Nordic just clearly has a lot more money to be doing some of this stuff. I do wonder if they could offer enough to like Activision and Warner Brothers and whoever else to make rescuing that IP worthwhile. But is it even worthwhile from a business perspective? Brand questions. Now, once again, as far as dormant IP, there's stuff from decades old material to stuff that major publishers aren't using. Like shit, Square Enix has a whole bunch of stuff they ain't using.
Indeed.
Especially from the Enix side.
Though that doesn't necessarily mean they'd be willing to actually sell it.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm like. Then again, I'm like, we might not know that. They might not. They might know it.
Yeah, let's be honest. Anything can really be sold if you're willing to pay enough.
Yeah, I'm like, and we don't really get any hints about what they're doing because, like, no one saw like them getting Kingdoms of Amalur or Time Splitters. People seem to be really happy about that, but
I'm certainly happy.
I mean, the next thing they could grab could be the Conduit series. That was that original shmup that High Voltage did, or they could buy all of High Voltage for their VR tech. It's like that's kind of the nature of these purchases. They are murky and unassailable until they are announced, and that's probably the way they like it. Like, as far as their, as far as what they've been doing, as far as their actual remaster have been kind of hit or miss. Like, and that's being kind. Like, going back to our Red Faction Guerrilla remastered review, like I found that remastering on the PC to be, quite frankly, terrible. Like, and bloated in comparison to the previous Steam version. Granted, I get that it was remastered for 4K, but
yeah, that's definitely one of those. If you don't have a 4K setup, it kind of sucks. We have to download all the textures and stuff for 4K, even if we're never going to use them. Back in my day, that was a high-res texture pack you'd just download if you wanted higher resolutions.
Yeah, and I've heard bad things about Definitive Edition. And on the consoles, it can get even worse. Titan Quest for the Nintendo Switch, that's just fucking broken. It's like I've seen the videos. I'm not sure if it's been patched or how much patching that needs. But hopefully it gets fixed, because that's kind of I think it's going for $30. It's an essential amount for a remastering, because Switch tax. And again, their the Blob remasterings seem to come out rather well. It might depend on who's doing a remastering, because they don't have like a dedicated company. They use a whole slew of developers to handle remastering duties. And that might be the key there. Another example, the Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy remastering came out just fine. It was the game that I remembered it, for good and for ill. It's just, hopefully they get better at actually, bringing back the old games, with modern sheen. Because, in addition to the remasterings, they've got the back catalog stuff on Steam, untouched. It's like, if you want to go and buy, say, the old Desperados games, you can. I'm not sure about compatibility issues, because that's always a thing when it comes to old games.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But if you want to get the old Spellforce games and the old Overclocked: A History of Violence and so on and so forth, they are there. So that is nice, and it's not just Steam. These things are available on GOG as well.
And they also have been doing a lot on Humble as well.
I mean, nothing as extensive as THQ near the end of its life. The original THQ, but they still do that. It's like, as far as future remasterings outside of the big IPs that they just got. Another aspect we haven't really talked about is the Nickelodeon deal. Briefly.
Oh, are they the ones who have like all the old Nicktoons games and stuff?
Yes, as I understand it, like the actual old Nickelodeon games. I mean, the original THQ made those back in the day, and THQ Nordic picked up the license to release those old games. And I was talking about this on Sunday. The Nicktoons game that seems to have the most actual nostalgia is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, PlayStation 2 era platformer. Which seems to be one of those cases. It was decent for PlayStation 2 era kids game. I personally don't have any nostalgia for that. I don't really have nostalgia for THQ's licensed works, because more often than not, they were shit.
Yeah, I think I played some of them back in the day. I think I saw the Nicktoons Racing game over in our old like computer games shelf.
Yeah, I mean, I came of age when they were doing the 16-bit platformers, and oh god, they're
The war
Yeah,
flashbacks are coming.
There were some good licensed 16-bit platformers. There were not a lot of good licensed 16-bit platformers.
and THQ did not make any of them, or if they did, I never played them. I'm like, the Ren and Stimpy games, shit. Rocko's Modern Life, shit. Our Real Monsters, shit. Like, maybe they got better in the PlayStation 2 era. I'm like, I don't know. When we get to those days, I wasn't in the habit of buying kids games because they tend by that point, kids games had shifted focus in being notoriously difficult and or shitty to being kind of bland and following the trends, and they kind of flowed into like the Wii HD era, and there are certainly a lot of these because and of course certain properties got more games than others. I mean, it should not shock you to learn that there are a shit ton of SpongeBob games, or indeed, and indeed there are a shit ton of Rugrats games because
Indeed.
I'm like, there were some Avatar games that were not good.
I think the one on the Xbox, you could get all the achievements in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know. I knew that thing for it. It was a very easy 1,000 points. Back when people really, really gave a shit about gamer score. Like, I'm like, like I said, I don't know what the nostalgia factor is on these games because, once again, THQ, the old THQ's licensed games were utterly correct. And, it's like, I think the worst I played were their fucking Home Alone games. Oh, God.
Were they the ones who did, like, the Home Alone 2 on the Super Nintendo?
Yes.
Indeed.
I had that game.
Yeah.
I never got past the... I only got to the second level, like, twice.
It's a game where you can get killed in the first 10 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, if you wait too long, Tim Curry just comes up and strangles you from behind.
Yeah. I'm like, the worst of them was probably the NES game. Holy shit, that was... that was, like, legitimately one of the worst games I've ever played. Like, that's the THQ I remember growing up. Like, I'm hoping, like, people, the kids who grew up in the PlayStation 2 era, didn't have to suffer through those kind of abominations. I mean, anyway, as much fun as it is to wax nostalgic about all this, I think that'll about do it for THQ Nordic and indeed this episode. Like, so if you liked tonight's broadcast, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications.
Or for the Twitch people, make sure to follow us. We're not affiliated yet, so you can't throw money at us yet.
Well, we are technically affiliated, we haven't turned that on because there might be some issues around that we can't talk about.
Yep.
So, anyway, the week ahead. So so we've actually got a broadcast tomorrow because we didn't announce this last week because we hadn't figured out stuff beforehand, but okay, we are going to cover the Nintendo Direct tomorrow at 6:00 p.m.
The one that from last week that was delayed on account of earthquake.
Yeah, I'm like, that's going to be 35 minutes long, and yeah, I'm like, we're probably not going to be we are obviously not going to be the only ones broadcasting around that time, But it's
If
amazing.
you care to hear our thoughts on it,
Yeah.
we'll be broadcasting them.
Yeah, it's long enough and at a good time enough for us to cover it. Basically, like I believe everyone of the core group is going to be here. Like, Kevin was thinking of joining us, but once again, he is kind of indisposed.
Yeah, he's called on account of hurricane.
As far as Ogre, we're still letting we haven't actually asked him since he's been on hiatus not that long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's see. We're planning on having a multiplayer session on Friday, showcasing the Golf Club 2019. Not sure how this is going to go. Honestly, this is a golf sim. Like, it's very intimidating, and I'll be honest, I'm having some difficulty with some of the controls. Like,
for the days of click 3 times with good timing to shoot golf your ball well.
Really having a trouble hitting that sweet spot and putting. Like, most of the time it's going too fast, like, or it goes too slow, and not far enough. Yes. It's better with a mouse, but it's still, I'm still over swinging. Like, anyway, and that does bring to Sunday's reviews. We are doing the Golf Club 2019. Even though this game isn't up our alley, we pressed forward since we got codes for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the most inexplicable sports game we've ever covered. Like, oh no, that's still that cycling game we did last year.
Cycling Team Manager or whatever it was.
Yeah, Pro Cycling Manager 2017. Like, thankfully we weren't sent 2018 codes. Like,
I mean, it's never a bad thing, but
yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's just holy fuck, that wasn't our thing. Like, anyway, and Lamplight City, which is a point-and-click adventure game from the creator of Shardlight and A Golden Wake. Like, it's a detective mystery game. I've been playing a pre-release version of the game. It comes out, I believe, on Friday. And I do have thoughts on it so far. I don't know how far I'm in the game. I'm a significant portion, I do know that. I've solved 3 cases. And I will have full and pointed remarks on Sunday. And yeah, I guess until tomorrow, I shall wish you good gaming.